So as we've been studying these prophets and listening and learning about how sometimes God's word is not simple, sometimes it's confusing, sometimes it comes in odd ways, and we as people don't always hear it, but it can come through various ways. And so today we're going to talk about one of our prophets, Daniel. This story comes from our Godly Play Stories, which is the curriculum we use. So we will start. So our story starts in Babylon, where our prophets and our people have been for a while now. So long that many of them started even having jobs for the king there. Daniel, our prophet that we will be talking about today, and his three friends, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, worked as the king at the king's court. God blessed Daniel and his friends with learning, wisdom, and skill. One day, the king of Babylon had a dream. He saw a great figure shining. There we go. See it shining, just like in his dream. He saw a great figure shining. As he watched it, it fell apart and blew away in the wind. None of the king's wise men knew what it had meant, but Daniel did. God showed him that a time will come when all the kingdom of the world will be destroyed, but God's kingdom will last forever. Another day, the king made a huge golden statue. Made a huge golden statue of a person and commanded the people to bow down and worship the image when they heard special music. The people who did not obey would be thrown into a furnace full of fire. Daniel's friends, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, would not bow to this figure. And so they were thrown into a blazing furnace. But God sent an angel to keep them safe, and not a hair on their head was burned. The king was amazed, so he gave the three friends a place of honor. The king had another dream. This time it was of a tall tree with animals gathered around it, birds in the air, and the tree bared so much fruit. Again, he didn't know what this dream meant. In the dream, the Holy One came down from heaven and said, "Cut down the tree and let animals flee and birds fly away." Daniel told the king, "The tree you saw was you. You are great and strong like a tree, but you will be chased away, and you will be like an animal, live like an animal, eating grass for 7 long years." The dream came true. The king was driven out and lived like an animal for 7 years. When he came back to the throne, he worshiped God. But soon that king would die, and his son began to rule. His son did not know God. One day he had a great feast, and there he used many things from the temple and from Jerusalem, holy things, things that should not be used in a feast or a party. Suddenly the people at the party saw fingers writing on the wall. The people could not read it because it was in Hebrew. It said, Daniel came, and so they went and got Daniel. And Daniel told the king that the words written were Mene, Mene, Tekel, Parsin. They mean God will bring an end. God will bring this king's rule to an end, and the kingdom of Babylon will be divided and give to the Medes and the Persians. They were right. That night the king was killed and King Darius took over. King Darius divided his new kingdom into 120 parts and chose 3 rulers to look over those parts. One of these was Daniel. The other 2 rulers, though, did not like Daniel, and so they decided they needed to do something to remove Daniel from his position of power. So they set a trap, and they said they knew that Daniel would not pray to anyone but his God. Daniel would never pray to a king. One day, Daniel was caught in his room, facing Jerusalem, praying to God. They brought him to the king. The king liked Daniel, but a law was a law. So Daniel was thrown into a den with lions. The king was up all night anxious about this. He was worried about Daniel. And so the morning, the king ran to the lion's den and called to Daniel. Daniel answered, God sent an angel to shut the lion's mouth, and they have not hurt me. The king was filled with gladness, and he gave orders to lift Daniel out of the den. The men who had accused Daniel were thrown into the lion's den instead. Daniel was honored through the kingdom all the rest of his life. Daniel also had dreams. Dreams that were hard to understand. One day, Daniel dreamed. Let me find the right one. Of 4 great beasts came out of the sea. Let's see if we can see this. There we go. 4 great beasts came out of the sea. One of the beasts was killed. The others were not killed, but they lost all their power. Then God appeared and ruled over all the other beasts forever. Daniel woke from his dream very troubled. He told his helper all about all he had seen. His helper told Daniel what it meant. 4 kings will rise up out of the earth, but their power will not last. It is God alone who will rule forever. Another time, Daniel had a vision of a ram charging all around a goat. The goat killed the ram. They're shiny like dreams. The goat killed the ram. Daniel could not understand what he had seen. But an angel named Gabriel came to him and told him that it was a vision of the end of all time. He said, a king will arise more powerful and evil than the others. This dream frightened Daniel. Daniel prayed for many days, asking the Lord to forgive the people and restore the great city of Jerusalem. Daniel remembered that the prophet Jeremiah had said the city would be restored after 70 years, yet it remained in pieces. Gabriel appeared to him again, and Gabriel said, Jeremiah meant not 70 years, but 70 times 70, which in our minds we might say, okay, 70 times 70 is, that's not how math or numbers worked in this time. They were images and meanings, and numbers had powers, or numbers were meaningful. And so what Daniel knew was this just meant a great period of time, a much longer time than anyone imagined. This was because the sin of the people were so great. The words of the angel Gabriel filled Daniel with great sadness. He fasted for 3 weeks, and then God sent him another vision. Daniel saw a man dressed in linen with a belt of gold around his waist. Daniel fell to the ground before him. Daniel fell to the ground before him. The man said, do not be afraid. I have come to help you understand these visions. The power of all kings will come to an end. There will be difficult, but God will stay close and deliver the people from all danger. Those who are wise shall understand. the man told Daniel that he would have a place in this future. So after we end every story, we enter in a time of asking questions that don't have to have an answer. It's a way to engage with the Bible and not just look for answers. I think we as people just always want to know how the story ends, how the hero won the battle, but we know these stories often don't have endings, or not yet. We know that the arc of the Bible shows us a God who was raised from the dead and defeated Satan, but we also know the Bible continued after that. And we know that us being here today continues that story. So these questions are ways we can interact with this story today. So the first question is, I wonder what part of the story you liked best. Zoe? The dreams, these? Yeah. Anybody else? Jojo, what part of the story? You like the dreams too? Sammy? Was that him? No. All right. Also, I forget to say this sometimes. This is also a moment where adults get to answer too. Downstairs, we just have our kids' voices, but we would love if you would all join us in wondering today. Okay. I wonder what part of this story is most important. Is there a most important part? Zoe? The whole story? What cool.
And just how God shows, his presence, very simple.
Yeah.
To the king of Babylon, who's not even Jewish, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And he did it twice to his son and to, this was Nebuchadnezzar's son?
Yes.
As well as him. So, because Israel was under their control, God was present with them.
Yeah. Yeah, this story really is a through line of God's presence with his people in exile. Any other most important parts? This part typically doesn't get a lot of answers. Oh. Dean, go for it. It's the dreams. I think it's interesting that even Daniel, who is a prophet, typically when we've had these stories, the prophets are the ones interpreting the dreams. And this, I believe, is the first time we've had a prophet who has dreams and has to have his helper or an angel explain the dream to him. And so it's an interesting turn from all the prophets we've been learning about. And yet he is able to explain others' dreams very well. So our next wondering question is, I wonder which part of the story is about you today, or where you are in the story. This one can be a little challenging. This one also tends to get a little silly downstairs.
When you said 70 times 70, I calculated, and I think it just needs, like you said, a long time.
Yeah.
But then where that comes in is, you said it's still going on now.
Mm-hmm.
It's here.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah, so we're part.
So this story is continuing.
It's true.
That's pretty interesting.
Yeah. One of the things that or philosophies around godly play. I think I might have made this up or adapted this to my own belief about it, is part of the reasons we tell these stories is we are part of this story. There's one lesson later, it's about writing your own story, and it's about we learn these stories because we are becoming a part of them. Our last part. I wonder if there's any part of the story we can take away and still have all we need. Dean?
They could have used something different than the lions.
They could have used something, right? Because we had the furnace and then the lion's den. So we could have used something different than the lion's den. Zoe. Can you say it again? I missed it. Ooh, the Hebrew writing? Why do you think it was written in Hebrew, I wonder? Because he could have just written it in the language that they understood, right? They didn't need, but they had to call Daniel to explain that writing.
I don't know my dreams, but I like they got rid of the dreams because those just kind of foretold actions that were about to happen.
Right? Yeah. There was no, I wonder what the warning is in having the dreams. We have a different story where we have somewhat of a prophet go to a king over and over and over again and warn of things happening. And the Bible tells us he hardened his heart, Pharaoh, again and again and again. And so similarly, it's telling kings over and over and again. And yet, it still happens. Was there another hand? So next we move into a response. So this is part of making these stories our own and learning about the stories and doing something with our hands to connect us to the story in a way so that we're not just sitting and listening. So this is your opportunity to come up and pick some kind of art thing, whether it's Play-Doh, crayons, pencils, to pick a moment or a part of the story or a part of what we've talked about that feels important for you today and make something of it, even if you're not going to keep it or if you are going to keep it. It's just a way to respond to what we've been learning. So come on up and pick how you want to respond today.